this interview episode, I am honored to introduce Stefanie Gonzales, the owner of Women's Wealth Effect and co-host of the YouTube channel Permission to Be Wealthy. Stefanie shares her strategy and journey around becoming location independent, as well as financially independent. Her journey towards abundance has been methodical, and it began with investing wisely, deep conversations with her partner around what they really want their lives and their children's lives to look like, and then intentionally building that life over a few years' time. Stefanie also shares some gold nuggets around how she's choosing to market her business on certain long-form platforms rather than social media. Here we go. Today we have Stefanie Gonzales. Stefanie, thanks for being on the show with me.
You're welcome. I'm so excited. This is a great opportunity to connect. So glad we're doing this.
I agree. So we saw each other about 3-4 months ago at FinCon, and you were recording an episode with Bernadette Joy, which is awesome. I would love to hear a bit about where you are today in your journey toward abundance, and then we'll backtrack so that we can really get a feel for where you've come from.
Yeah. Okay, so we can talk about abundance in a couple of different ways. One of the biggest things for us, I think as a family is we are now debt-free millionaires, and the path to getting to that was long, right? 15, 16 years of building a career and increasing our income and figuring out how to learn how to do the thing along the way. And it wasn't until I really understood what financial independence really meant. I tell people, or I ask people, what is financial independence to you? And, I typically hear things like, I can cover my bills, or I'm now, whenever you're talking to someone who's exiting maybe a home and going to college and then getting their first job, they're like, I can pay all my bills. I'm making my own money. And that's financial stability, right? That's what I tell people. It's the financial stability. But financial independence is very different. And quite frankly, Stefanie 5 years ago was going to continue working until she was 65 and be a GM or a COO of some large global company, because that's what I envisioned for myself. What I recognize is that, when I became a mom and I wanted to be a present wife, and I was working this global tech job in Singapore, working 60 plus hours a week, I recognized that abundance and freedom to me looked like time freedom, looked like location freedom of where we wanted to live. And so investing to achieve that was really important. Then on the flip side of that, I have my husband, right, who's this example for me, who's been an entrepreneur for almost a decade now, and he's always had this business mindset. I never did until a few years ago, of course. And now I can't look at anything not from the lens of what type of business opportunity is there, which is it's really interesting. Even we went back to the US for a couple of trips this last year, and I was like, wow, I just look at things so differently and what you could do with your time, whether it be to create opportunities or a business or whatever. And so, I've always been a positive person. So from an abundance perspective, positivity has always been the way that I operate, right? People have always given me feedback about, I always have a smile on my face. I'm the first one to help. That's just in my nature. I now have more peace around the financial elements in my life related to abundance and the business elements of my life related to abundance. And I now have this sense of, I have inherent skills and gifts that I can release out into the world, and people will pay for that, right? Experiences, people want those things. And I think me being able to be my now most authentic self versus the corporate Stefanie a few years ago has allowed me to tap into that more.
Yeah.
And so it's exciting.
Wow. Talk to me about this concept of location freedom. I think that some of us have heard that, and maybe we know some people that live around the world. But for the average American business owner, that might be a new concept. So talk to me a little more about that and how you got there. Like, what were some steps that you took even?
I always knew that I wanted to take some type of time or opportunity to live abroad. I didn't start traveling really, and internationally rather, until I was in my, middle 20s working at the tech company that I was working for. My first few trips were to Europe, and then I was traveling to Asia a lot. And it was actually my brother who went off to go get his PhD in Singapore after having left, home. Even in high school, he went to a boarding school, right? So he was always the location independent guy. He was going to go wherever the opportunity was. And I remember thinking, okay, well, from a career standpoint, I need to do an international assignment. So that was kind of the first thing for me, dipping my toe in the water of, I'll obviously travel internationally for work because I worked on global teams. But at some point, I knew I was going to have to live and work abroad. I lucked out because I found a partner that loves to, travel abroad. He lived abroad in college. And actually, when we met, he up and left the U.S. and I had to go chase him to Spain and bring him back to Austin, Texas. But that being said, I think moving to Singapore gave us the opportunity to talk to so many other people about the possibilities of continuing to live abroad. Because once you make the step to do it, you meet so many other like-minded individuals who are more than willing to share why they're living abroad, how they're living abroad, what transitions or pivots they've ultimately made while living abroad. And, people kind of frame it in the sense of the friends that you make abroad are friends for a lifetime, and that's so true. But the stories and the conversations and the things that you learn from others who have been doing this for a long period of time are really interesting. And so we kind of knew that once we moved abroad, we would potentially not move back to the US. And at the time, it wasn't, a big deal. But when I decided to leave the tech job that I was at, because we had invested enough for me to go ahead and leave my job, we decided that we wanted to experience Europe. And where was that going to be? As business owners and as Americans, right, our businesses are established in the U.S. Our clients are primarily based in the U.S. And that's with purpose, right? Because we know U.S. tax law. We know we know about LLCs. We know about how that works. And that was really important. Now that we're living in other countries, right, specifically Portugal, we have to understand the implications related to taxes and that type of thing. But entities and where they are and all that other stuff, we've had to just give some thought to. But from the standpoint of location independence, outside of the business, our ideal is to be location independent. If you look at what's happened even across the globe over the last few years, people and families have been displaced, right, to other countries because of specific situations. And don't put it past me to say that that will never happen to us. Right? It could. And so for a lot of different reasons. And, now being financially independent, and one of our goals, right? Our long-term goals is to be so financially independent that location independence isn't even a thought, right? Because we recognize the importance of that long-term.
Yeah. So you could just literally go anywhere and it almost wouldn't matter as far as the cost of living or this or that, because you've invested so well and you've accelerated along that journey to where you really are just fully in control, right?
Yeah. And, control's one thing. And the reality is we all have only a certain amount of control that we can have. Example, Portugal has a D7. It's a visa that we came in on. We have 2-year residency right now. We'll re-up in a couple of years. And then after 5 years' time, we can apply for citizenship. With that came certain specific tax advantages, which was an NHR, a non-habitual residency. And that means that Portugal will not dual tax us. So let's say if I owed in the US $10,000 in taxes next year, Portugal said I owe 12,000, they would recognize that I've already paid the 10 to the US, and they would only require me to pay the 2 to Portugal, right? So I wouldn't have this dual taxation situation, but that's very specific to D7 and NHR. Portugal has also had a golden visa for a long time. So bunches of investors have been buying up properties. The locals, right, are feeling the crunch of like inflation, high housing prices. And so the government's having to figure out how to unwind a little bit of what they've done, right? And so things are changing real time with tax law, visa and residency, right? And this experience, I think, has taught us that being really knowledgeable about the changes and how that impacts you. Of course, we're here because our investment income in the future won't be taxed under D7. Let's say when we're 50, right? And we're only living on our investments. Portugal will not tax us on that at all.
Wow.
So that was a huge benefit for us being here. But if that changes, right?
Yeah.
Granted, if that changes, it may be more so for people that are coming in new. But yeah, I mean, that's something that we have to think about. It's the reality of our situation and being aware.
Yeah. So when you looked at making a move, was it this whole equation around cost of living and tax laws and how does this affect the business? And were there several places that you considered? Or was, for whatever reason, Portugal like the primary and then you just kind of like double check some things? How did that look before you moved, like when you're in the planning process?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Portugal and Spain were on the top of our list from a Europe standpoint. Bali, Indonesia was a big consideration for us. We very much have this like deep love for Southeast Asia in general. And so that was a strong consideration. And, you know, Indonesia has created a lot of digital nomad and entrepreneurial type visas and options there as well. Then if you looked at like the United States as an option, I mean, Texas is where we're from, no income tax, huge benefit from a business standpoint, right, all those things. But, you know, we have family in California, so that was the other consideration. That was very expensive. And so, yeah, there was very much a financial equation in all of that. And we kind of took it through 5 different things: business, personal finance, safety for our family, healthcare, education for the kids, and, you know, of course, cost of living is in all of that. But then it was type of lifestyle. What kind of lifestyle did we really want? Yeah. And it's interesting because we went back to the US for the first time since COVID in March last year. And it was kind of this honeymoon phase, right? We had seen our family. It had been a very long time. Our kids got to see their cousins. Like, it was this wonderful and exhausting trip. So on our way back, we're like, do we want to move back? And I remember Joe and I sitting on our flight, and he's in an aisle seat, I'm in an aisle seat, and we're literally going through those 5 criteria and mapping out all the different locations and going, how do these things prioritize, you know, if we decided to move back? And people looked at us like we were crazy to even say that, right? We're now in Portugal, like, why would we move back? But, you know, family is a big draw. And we quickly snapped out of it. But it was a consideration.
Yeah. That is awesome. So before kids, my husband and I lived in the Virgin Islands for a year. And that was our kind of like test, right? We were thinking, okay, it's a U.S. territory. We'll go there, see how things are. He had a teaching opportunity at a Montessori school there. It was a wonderful experience. And the plan was, because he is a dual citizen, American and Irish. So we had the opportunity to go live in Ireland. And that was St. Thomas was supposed to be our like test. And then we could jump off and we could go, you know, overseas, like wherever we wanted, but ideally to Ireland. And the year in the islands was tons of fun, everything you think it's going to be, you know, beaches, boats, all the cool stuff, right? But we also had to live there and work there and learn about the culture there. And we did make some amazing friends. Like you mentioned, the friends from elsewhere are truly friends for life. But in the end, going to a different country to start our family really freaked me out. Just not knowing what the healthcare situation would be. Or like, even though you hear like, oh, like Europe's healthcare is so awesome, it's free, it's this, it's that. It just was the unknown to me. And I'm in Texas, so I know exactly what you're talking about, being from here, the tax laws and everything. I knew what the healthcare situation would be in Texas. I know where to go to a hospital. I know how to do these things. I know that there's a NICU up the street from me, just in case there was any issues. So ultimately, that's what drove us to come back. And it all boils down to fear. And I think I didn't have my business at that time, but in general, in all of life, whatever holds us back boils down to fear. So how did you navigate, or just tell us an example maybe of how you've navigated through fear at some point, either when it comes to location or business?
Oh, this is such a great question. And you brought up so many ideas as you were walking me through that. First of all, we had our kids in Singapore. And I wouldn't have them anywhere else.
Wow.
Because their healthcare system's great. But the community and the country in general, I can't express it the right way until you experience it. But here's an interesting thing. One of my old managers at the company that I worked for, he and his wife both lived in Xiamen and I think in Taiwan. And he told me, because I was telling him, I was like, we want to move to Singapore at some point. This is our development plan. He was like, I think it's absolutely it's great. I was like, but the only thing that's holding me back is we want to start growing our family. He was like, well, we had our kids in Asia. He was like, and my wife demanded that we stay for the second. He was like, if you ever want to talk to her, let me know. He was like, here's this hospital system that we used. It's Western medicine, right, in the system. So you've got doctors who have studied in the U.S. They treat Western medicine style and, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, cool. So we looked up that hospital system. It was Parkway system. We found a great hospital. But even, as we went down the path of actually having our kids, we were pregnant with our son a month into me moving to Singapore, by the way. So that was
meant to be.
Yeah. But I tried to describe it to my mom, who is a nurse, and, of course, she's defending her position, right?
Of course.
But Asia has this interesting way of taking care of mothers and allowing them to heal after having children. And we don't do that very well in the U.S. We just don't. And from confinement, right, a month to 2 months of literal heal time, help and support. In the hospital, if you have a C-section, you're there for almost a week, right? Wow. If you have a baby naturally, you're there for 2-3 days minimum, right? We had full-time live-in help. It was very affordable, and our nanny was amazing and helpful and super. I was a first-time mom. I had no idea what was going on. I didn't have my mom there or my grandma there. Granted, my mother was not very happy that we were having our grandkids abroad, but I will say this other thing. Mothers really come together as a community when you're abroad. The Facebook groups, the expat groups, I've learned the value of mothers groups or moms groups as I've lived abroad. And the moms that I've made friends with in Singapore when I had my first kid, I'm still very good friends with. A couple of them have moved to Europe. We've already seen each other traveling and visiting each other as families. And even now here in Portugal, we have met really, really good friends, families through our kids, because everyone's trying to do all those things, figure out the healthcare system, figure out how to find a nanny. You can't, just call grandma up and have her come over. Yeah. And so we've made some sacrifices in that way. Don't get me wrong, but it is It's doable when you figure out how to put yourself out there. And you know what I'm talking about, right? Having lived there on the island, you see the effort it will take to do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
But it's very much possible.
Have you ever pictured yourself having your own show? Maybe it's time. This show is edited and produced by podcastabundance.com. And if you like what we're doing, we can do it for your business too. I'm Virginia Elder, and I've been helping entrepreneurs start podcasts to market their business since 2019. I coach you through branding, structuring your episodes, workflow, and recording your podcast. Then my team and I professionally edit your audio and video so that you don't have to. We'll even write your episode descriptions and titles so that when potential customers turn to Google, your show appears in their search results. Establish authority in your niche, expand your reach, and create a library of helpful content for potential and current clients, all with your own podcast. I'm here to hold your hand and make podcasting the exciting, up-leveling experience it should be, skirting you past the tech and software struggles too. Take the first step by booking a call with me using the link in the show notes or by visiting podcastabundance.com. Now, on to the rest of the show. That's awesome. And I would say, I mean, this is very much like a woman business owner conversation, but I would say, in any instance, I think so often we forget to just ask for help, ask for the resource, ask for, hey, how did you do this? What would you do? Where would you navigate, right? Because that's what it sounds like. You asked and they shared. And then that set you on this path toward doing what you wanted in a safe way, because you were able to kind of vet the resources that you were given and then experience it. And it sounds like it turned out way better than what any of us could have expected.
Yeah, I tell people, I don't know how we would have had our kids in the U.S. knowing what I know now and knowing how much I was working at the time, right? If it wasn't for my full-time live-in help as a executive at a company, there's no way. And I had peers, right, that were back in the U.S. And mind you, COVID happened at that time. And I was in the supply chain. So hair is on fire. We're trying to get computers and desktops and monitors to schools and healthcare systems and the government. And I remember talking to some of my peers who had also had their kids around the same time I did. And they were in tears because they're like, I'm working from home. My kids are here. I have no help. And I'm like, I wasn't worried about that. Right? And so it's really interesting. If you talk about right place, right time for us in that phase of life, it's also the thing we didn't calculate moving to Portugal. We didn't calculate us not having our nanny. So it's been a big shift.
Yeah, because as you mentioned, a full-time live-in nanny here in the U.S., to do that, you have to definitely be of a certain income, a certain affluence to be able to just easily afford that. Yes, you can make it work. There's different au pair programs and things, but most average folks do not have that. And so that's a really cool experience for you even to have had that experience with young children. So I'm a little bit jelly.
It really goes down to, though, right? If you look at the system around childcare in the U.S. and how that works and how we're supporting families, and there's a lot of work to do. So much work to do.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit, speaking of work to do, about the work you do around women and helping them learn to invest well for themselves.
Yeah, so I am the founder of Women's Wealth Effect, which is a personal finance brand specifically focused on career women, helping them invest for financial independence, specifically through investing in the stock market, right? And, my experience in getting to the point of recognizing what financial independence could mean, and then ultimately pursuing it with purpose, was like I could actually answer the question for myself of how much was enough when it came to my career. How long did I need to work? How much did I need to save and invest? Could I leave this early? Did I have to wait? Right? And just having that peace of mind is such an anxiety lifter. The clients that I work with, right, when we work through that body of work, mind you, I have over a decade of experience of planning and forecasting. So in the way that I teach personal finance, I'm not just teaching the tactical and the execution of what you do to save and invest and, establish your financial foundation, but I also help women really get into the details of understanding how to forecast their plan so they know if I take action here, I expect outcome over here, right? And that's incredibly motivating. It's incredibly powerful, and you gain a lot of confidence in doing it that way, right? And so that's primarily what I do in terms of my business. My partner has been in entrepreneurship for, like I said, over a decade, and he's very much a business coach for me. But we have this big shared interest in helping other people, and we recognize that we are a couple of color that has accomplished a level of financial independence for ourselves, and we're living a very non-traditional life with 2 young boys. And we feel like we very much have a story to share to help other people give themselves quote unquote permission to be wealthy. And so we have a YouTube channel together that is called Permission to Be Wealthy. We started that 2 years ago when we were leaving Singapore and coming to Portugal. And quite frankly, I was overwhelmed and not ready. And so, we started and, probably created 19 to 20, 30 videos at that time. And so we just took a pause. I was like, I have to get Women's Wealth Effect up and running. We've got to transition to Portugal. We got to get kids in school, all these things. And so we agreed that we wanted to pick that back up coming out of 2023. And yeah, we're having a lot of fun. And quite frankly, I feel like I needed the couple of years of experience and practice. And now I feel really good about doing this work within YouTube. And part of me wants to be able to share a lot of this stuff for free. I think when you become financially independent and you follow the FIRE movement, you just want to help other people find this too. And so, yeah, we're putting our strategy hat on, of course, and thinking about how we want to leverage YouTube as a space. But now I have all this course content and things I can give for free, or, obviously invite people to join my program and give access to, Joseph and I as a couple to help coach and that type of thing. And so we're working through that right now, but it's been really fun.
Yeah, that's so exciting. Something I would love to hear about that you brought up is the potential overwhelm when you start a project like a podcast or a YouTube channel. Yes, there were things, the kids were young, you're moving, there's all this life that's happening. But in addition to that, it sounds like you really needed a foundation to be built, and you needed some clarity around what you're doing and why on this YouTube channel before you were able to confidently pick it back up a couple years later. So can you take us back 2 years and talk to me about why that was overwhelming, or what was going on? Was it the equipment? Was it the editing? Share that piece with me. What's hard about this?
Yeah, let's go back to the YouTube part because that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because now I've got this second round.
Yeah.
First of all, on the equipment side, shout out to Gonzales, Coach Joseph Gonzales on Instagram. He is an amazing tech guy, and he's got all of our tech done. I log onto a call, People hear the quality of my audio. They see the, quality of our video and they're like, wow, and I'm like, I did none of this.
Yeah.
That's my husband. He loves to do it too. Like,
that's awesome.
If you think about, and some of his tutorials have been featured on like Think Media, and he'll be like, hey, look, some of my stuff is on Think Media. This is cool. So he
That's
really
great.
is very good at it and he loves doing it. So I'm very grateful to that, to him for that.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, I didn't have a method then. I knew what I knew from the standpoint of my personal experience related to personal finance, and I was very much in it, actively investing, all that stuff. But I hadn't yet sat down and said, Stefanie, Women's Wealth Effect, as a method that we use to teach personal finance and scale. I didn't have that yet. I have that now. And so now it kind of feels weird. I feel like I'm walking into a YouTube channel with this foundation. And it's like, people will see my first YouTube video and I'm like, and by the way, I have a course and I have, and it's very weird because I've seen, right, people on YouTube who start and then they're building their product along the way and they're building their audience along the way. We're in this weird situation where we're going to, of course, adjust to this audience. The audience is very different, by the way. Very different than Instagram and what I've been experiencing over the last couple of years. And I love it. I also am a more natural long form content creator. I do okay in short form. Plutus nominated me in the short form video category this year. And I was like, what? I was like, first of all,
congrats,
this
by
has
the way.
taken a while to get to this moment. Thank you. But I really thrive in the long form. That's just the way that I teach. That's where I feel more comfortable. And so not having the method was one thing, and now I feel more comfortable putting my spin on something, right? Mm-hmm. When it comes to talking about emergency fund, debt pay down, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Even the order of operations and investing for high income earners, all that stuff. But I have an effect method. I have a free mini course that I think about and talk to. I have a planner that I talk about, a forecasting planner, all these things, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like I have a way of helping people through this thing that's not just, hey, go to Investopedia and read an article or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I'm not regurgitating something that is, same thing.
Right.
So that's been really helpful. On the editing side, I don't know if it was just super overwhelming then, and I just wasn't in the mindset of editing yet. Granted, I was still in like Excel and supply chain and get product from Asia. So you can imagine how full my brain was.
Yeah.
I'm very tired now because I'm exercising my brain in a very different creative way all the time. More tired than a different tired than I was when I was working in tech. Mm-hmm. But now I have enough reps and like the right muscle in my brain to understand how I want to scale editing. Mm. And I also have content that I can put into my editing process, right? I'm not creating everything from scratch either. Mm-hmm. So right now we're very much in this phase of identifying our look and feel, kind of our brand presence and that type of thing, how we want to show up on YouTube. But I also think we're using DaVinci Resolve, which helps a lot versus Final Cut.
Yeah.
And Final Cut I love because I can just like cut all the like middle stuff out. And I kind of use it as my first set of process. And then DaVinci Resolve is just a way more user-friendly interface for editing for me right now. And it actually gets me excited because it's something I enjoy using versus like Final Cut's kind of like old DOS to me. Like you really have to know it and you have to be like a full-blown video guru to love it. Yes. And I just don't. In the future, would I love to hire an editor? Yes. And the answer is going to be yes, I'm going to need to. And we have hired editors before for some of our short form video content and that type of thing. But yeah, this time around, because of the foundation in my business and the method that I now have, there's confidence that I hope I display in my videos. Yeah. And then on the editing side, I have more of a creative mind for that type of work now, and it doesn't feel as daunting. So I've been able to pick it up faster than I had before.
Yeah. So you mentioned a few things there. Yes, clarity of concept and confidence around what your offers are, and confidence in your voice and what you're speaking about or teaching about. But also, there's a piece of decluttering, really, that happened with you transitioning from corporate completely to entrepreneurship in that time frame. Yes, you essentially decluttered your mind of all of the supply chain, tech, spreadsheets, all of your responsibilities at your old corporate career, right? And it is extremely hard and probably unreasonable to expect someone to almost live a dual life like that and be successful at both. Like, I think that's pretty unfair. And so it makes complete sense that at that time, your brain was having to split. And, during the day, you're one person managing this high profile career, right? Very, a very large load of responsibility. And then, come home and let's talk about this on YouTube. And by the way, we have kids and this and that.
And I was trying to do that with a partner too, by the way. If I was just doing it by myself, it would be a totally different discussion. But at the time we were recording videos together and we would come to the table to record a video and it'd be like, what are we talking about? And it would be a whole, so that's another thing in itself.
Yeah. So there's a lot that I think listeners can take away there when you're the business owner, which we both are at this point. There's still a certain, almost like left brain, right brain, turn this, turn off, turn this on, turn that off type of situation going. And for me, when I'm in this YouTube or podcasting space, it's almost like my marketing brain is on versus when I'm in a space where I'm executing client work, that's the piece of my brain is on. How do I create their vision and their brand? So it is still this dual pedal situation, I would say, but I'm with you. There's no way I could do this well if I was working corporate. It's just too different. So I think there was a big decluttering process almost there.
Yeah. Knowing what I know now, and this is a really big one because this can be dangerous. And I say that now more with confidence. Mm-hmm. The way that I was working before and the high adrenaline state that I was in before is not natural. And now where I'm at, I did Women's Wealth Effect to an extent on the side. I really started it when I was on my maternity leave for my second kid. So I had some time. But then when I got back into working, I was like, I don't know how I can sustain this for very much longer. To be frank, I was back to full-time work for 6 to 9 months and then I was gone. Then I was into, hey, let's go build this thing. I'm also 1,000% type person. So I was either going to stay in corporate or I was going to do this other thing. So that's my personality. That being said, I do see people doing both. And while I think there is reason to say hey, you need to have this foundation. If you don't have the financial independence that we have, right, to be able to pause on the active income. We've got some significant runway where I don't have to make money right now. So this is fun. This comes from the heart. It's what I really want to do. I feel like the right thing is going to generate the right ultimate business outcomes, right? But I'm more of the opinion on impact for myself right now. That being said, I can't go back to the hustle the way that I used to. I refuse. And to be honest, my business hasn't scaled as quickly as it could because I just refuse. And that's this non-negotiable I have for myself.
Yeah.
And I've had to figure out how to even navigate that. Mm-hmm. It's I don't need to stack my calendar. I need to give myself some breathing room. I, can take a Friday off, And Bernadette and I talk about this all the time. It also forces you to rationalize, where are you going to spend your time? Sure, podcasting is an example, right? When I got into that with Bernadette last year, I told her, I said, I want to do kind of the back-end production elements. I'm not going to edit. We hired someone, right? Because I had my YouTube experience and I was like, there's no way I'm going to edit podcasts.
Yeah, so you're I learned.
Yes. But, thinking strategically about covers and title and, show notes and understanding what it took to get it from concept to the end thing, I wanted to really be a part of. So I really pretty much asked her to be hands off. And she respected that. And she was like, I feel like I haven't, she was very thankful.
Yeah.
That being said, I think it's important for you to learn what's going on so that you can make more educated decisions on what you want to spend your money on when you decide to outsource, right? Whether it's a couple of months of doing something, 6 months of doing something, but have very clear, at this point in time, I'm going to evaluate, is this where I need to spend my time or not? I'm not a very good delegator either, right? That was one of my biggest development opportunities, even in corporate. And I've had to try to put that hat on more and more because I'm just not going to burn myself into the ground.
Yeah. So I think that is one of the main messages that I do want to address in this show is so often people start their own business thinking this is going to be the answer. I'm not going to work as much as I did in corporate. I'm going to design my lifestyle. I'm going to design this business around the lifestyle that I want. And if we aren't ultra intentional about remembering that this week and next month and next year, and every single time we start a new initiative or launch a new marketing thing or, hire another contractor or whatever we're doing, it's so easy to suddenly pick your head up and you're working more than you were in corporate and maybe not even getting as much traction as what you would expect for those hours. So that is a huge piece and a big mistake that leads to burnout. And I'm so curious because you said I'm not going to allow this to burn me down or burn me out. So talk to me about some really specific tools or ways that you set those boundaries and how you communicated them or executed them. Tell us how to do that, because I think lots of people really need help in that area.
I'll use one example. When I first got into this is now my full-time job, I had this open calendar and I was doing one-on-one coaching at the time. And I was like, here's my calendar, book the time that you want. And the reality is that wasn't the right thing. So now Calendly is my best friend. There are very specific blocks of time that are available. If they're not available, they're just not. I live in Portugal, in Europe, right, which is the most unideal place to be working with U.S. clients because I only get 2 to 3 hours in the afternoon, my afternoons, to really get any U.S. time, which is your morning, because I don't do a lot of evening stuff. I might do 1, 2, or 3 calls in the month, right, in the evening, but that's it. Yeah, because I was doing 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. every single weeknight.
Wow.
In tech for almost 15 years. I'm not kidding.
Whoa.
So that being said, I refuse. So that's, I think having your non-negotiables is a big part because then you have to figure out how to design it. And then you start building your business plan and you backtrack it. Let's say you're doing one-on-one coaching and I say, I have 2 to 3 hours for 5 days a week available. At max, I've got 10 to 15 hours that I can work if I was only doing client work, right? Because the other hours of those days, earlier morning, whatever, I can do other things like funnel work, strategic work, whatever. So that's the starting point. I have 10 to 15 hours a week. If I have clients that are going to pay me $500 a session, how do you back that up? How does that work? How many people do you have to have on your email list? On a masterclass? What are the conversion rates? It's really a numbers game when it comes down to that type of stuff. And so I would say mid-year last year, I was going to launch another round of cohorts in the second half of the year last year for my Women's Wealth Investing Effect program. And I actually just paused. I was like, you know what? I need to get really clear with what my actual business number strategy is. Like, what do I have to accomplish in terms of how many people I get into my masterclass? Every time I run the masterclass, what is the conversion I'm expecting? Do I want to fund ads to that? Because quite frankly, Instagram and other social media is just not the same. That's one. And number two, I personally don't want to show up every day there. Like, I do want to go have the right content out there that makes sense from a business standpoint. But if I'm being honest, that's not my long-term game. So yeah, I do think about ads and how am I have to think about, I am now a $1 million plus net worth individual. How do I start making business decisions that way instead of $100,000 net worth individual, right? And so that's kind of the thing that's in my head this year. And now that we've got this YouTube channel, I'm looking at the whiteboard right here. We're very clear on what do we want to accomplish, by when, what are we doing every single week as non-negotiables to accomplish that? What are we changing in our schedule? How is that impacting Women's Wealth Effect for me as a business owner? And, those things are like real, put it on paper, just like a personal finance plan has to be.
Absolutely. There's a few things there that even we touched on earlier in the episode that are coming back up. There's the strategy where you maybe don't have the foundation, you don't have the website, you don't have the audience built, and you just need to start creating content. And there's definitely something to be said for that strategy because, okay, great, launch a website. Nobody's going to visit it if nobody knows it's there. And so how are you going to tell people that it's there? How are you going to start allowing people to get to know, like, and trust you so that they are even curious to click the button to book a call, right? And then there's this other strategy where it seems like where you and your husband are is you have much of a foundation built, and now it's a matter of acceleration and growth and scale. And so can you talk to us a little bit about the strategy or some things that you're thinking about as you launch into this, let's just say, marketing platform, and like what that looks like from a planning standpoint? Like, what should business owners be looking at when they are in this situation and have the platform ready and we just need to scale?
Yeah, I think one of the things that comes to mind for me, and maybe I learned this because we were in Portugal and the time piece was such an important part. A very specific example. I don't do webinars at like 7:30 p.m. CST. That'd be midnight my time, right? So if I can't do that, if I can't have my face live with people for an hour or 2 hours to have them get to know me even more, like and trust me even more, etc., I have to figure out how to get my personality, my perspective, my everything, right, in front of a client as much as possible. So one very specific example that, we worked through on this was when I was thinking of my lead magnet. One of them, I have like 3. I could have done a PDF, like download this PDF and here's all this stuff that you can learn, for free. But I created a free video mini course because that was an opportunity for me to get my face literally in front of a client, right? And it's a 30-minute mini course. It's 6 modules. Each video is less than 5 minutes. Quite frankly, they're like 2.5 to 3 minutes each module, right? And I did that with purpose because if I couldn't do the webinar, let me do this, right? I'm more natural on longer form content. That worked out great. And now I'm building my email list. I'm building more trust. I'm building more credibility. And, that thing will continue to evolve. But that's the decision between PDF and a video content element. So I say this because I think video, high quality video, is really important. Walk around everyone's doing this. They're making decisions every minute of their day on their phone, on social, reading a article, whatever. And the more that you can either get your face in front of people, real interaction, or give them different mediums too. Audio, the podcast piece is a big component of the strategy there, right? And even if you're doing podcasting, doing video with the podcasting, kill two birds with one stone, right? The way that we've created this space is we try to create it like you're in our living room. We're talking together. And I got a lot of feedback on that when I did my Career Effects series, where I would bring women to talk about their careers and their personal lives. And I had a couple instances where these women were in Lisbon, so I brought them to my apartment. And we set up the whole thing. And the feedback I would get from people was like, I love this format because I feel like I'm there with you guys in the conversation. Right? So think about, obviously Oprah built a huge following, right, with just her talk show. How are you creating a space where people want to come, if you're using video, where people want to come and be in the room with you?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I look at it now as a digital remote business owner who's not in the US all the time to go interact with clients.
Yeah, I love that. It speaks to the thoughtfulness required, not just around your messaging and your brand and like what we typically talk about when we speak about branding and like colors and logos and all that kind of stuff, but the literal feel of your videos and of your production. I would say for you, even your tone and the way you speak is so soft and calming and relaxing. And soft not meaning like I can't hear you, but it is just a comforting tone, which I think is also really important and maybe intentional around your brand. And speaking about money, it tends to be a stress point for women. So even your like natural delivery of just how you're talking to me is a piece of your branding that could be intentional or it could not, but it's in alignment with your goals. So I love that piece.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think the thing that I've just tried to think about too in this, like I could have shown up as like very corporate, and actually if you look at some of my first YouTube videos, that's the way it was. And I would come off of like recording and editing and my husband would be like, we got to work on this. And I'd be like, what are you talking about? This has worked for me for 15 years. There's definitely a difference now. So, that's reps and comfort and finding your voice and that type of thing, which is great.
Yeah.
The other thing, like as a woman, I don't really, COVID did me a solid, and I didn't really wear makeup for a very long time. I still don't to an extent, unless I'm like really at an event. And so I'm not like full makeup for most of anything because I just never wanted to get in that habit, or else I'd never do this stuff. I don't like it. And I've gotten comments of that. They're like other creators that have said, it's pretty bold doing what you're doing and like the way that you do it, and you give me inspiration too. And I'm like, I hope so. The more that I can be myself, the better. And if myself was like full face makeup and like I love that and that's just me and my personality, then that would have been me. But it's not.
Yeah.
So me and all my gray hair.
No, I love it. Well, and that's a piece that I do end up talking to a lot of business owners who are new to the podcast or YouTube space. We talk about removing barriers. And one big barrier is your setup space. Like if you have to go set up your lighting, plug in your microphone, move furniture, and do all this just to record one video, you're not going to do that very often, just being frank, right? It has to be easy. It has to be either like a setup space that you can always access. Maybe you do plug in a couple lights, but it shouldn't be this like household uproar.
Moving things around and the
Yeah.
I get it. I totally get it.
And then the other piece of that for women especially is the appearance, right? The makeup, the jewelry, the hair, the clothes, whatever it is. And I'm with you. Like, I'm creating this podcast. My husband was laughing at me the other day. He's like, "You're wearing that?" Because I was wearing, well, for one, I always wear sweatpants. So you can't see it in this video, but I am wearing sweatpants and slippers. And so even in some of my more like full, like solo episodes, I'm in a cozy sweater, wearing my sweatpants with my feet pulled up in the chair. And it's like what you were saying, like this living room conversation, because this has to be accessible to every business owner. And it has to be this comfortable space where we can potentially have hard conversations and it not feel corporate and stiff and like you're being told what to do, because nobody here's a child. So like, I agree, like all the intentions are there specifically. And the other piece I would love for you to share about is how you've grown behind the mic. So from the first time you had to record an episode or a YouTube video, and the personal development journey that has occurred probably unexpectedly as you've gotten more comfortable speaking about yourself, speaking about your business, and teaching.
Yeah, I think in a couple of ways. I did this video sharing about my short form content journey for Plutus, and I shared that like 5-something years ago, I wasn't an entrepreneur at the time. I was still in corporate. I was literally crying to my husband and telling him, like, please do not put me on any video or our kids on any video for your social media stuff. Like, part of it was very much this, I had this brand at work. To have like a social media something did not feel right for me at the time. That is changing right now, which is so cool to see for successful people in corporate. They have a brand. And I'm really interested to see how companies address that element for people. That being said, I feel a lot more relaxed. And, in all honesty, I'm a collaborator. I'm a conversationalist. That's where I just get in my element. And so in that regard, that's been great because I've gotten to do that. I think the other thing is, from the standpoint of like YouTube, maybe not so much podcasting because there's not the video element, but there's a certain way that I want to teach. There's a certain way that I want my content to be displayed. I want the data element. I want someone to see a woman who understands Excel and projections and finance and be comfortable and excited about it, because I am, right? And so there's certain topics, right, that are very trendy topics, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that because that doesn't match how I want my end product to be displayed out into the world. And so maybe it also comes with age, right? I'm turning 40 this year, and I have very much an opinion on what I want that to look like, even brand sponsorships, right? And so I think from that standpoint, that's a little bit of my evolution behind the mic. I think back to the first couple of podcast episodes that I was on as a guest, and I was like very over prepared because I was just like, I needed to be like over prepared. And that came through to me to an extent, right, in the end product. And I think just recognizing that the other person I'm speaking to is another person, and just creating open conversation is better than rigid and all that good stuff. And so I think people find that I take them very different places, even when they interview me, right? Probably like you're experiencing right now. But that's the beauty of this medium. You know what I mean? And then if you love speaking with somebody on a specific topic, bring them back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are no rules.
Yeah.
Do whatever you want. Bring them back.
There really aren't.
Go longer. Whatever you need to do.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I've listened to some long podcasts. Tim Ferriss has some long podcasts. So
Yeah. Yeah. As long as you're getting value. And that's the other piece. Like people always ask me, how long should my podcast be? How long should my episodes be? And the answer is, as long as it's valuable to the audience, people will stick around and listen. Like you said, you will listen to Tim Ferriss because you're getting something out of it. You're entertained, you're informed, you are receiving information that is triggering either thoughts or action. And so as long as that's happening, sure, keep going. But the second that you kind of run out of things to say, or you feel like it's not important or impactful for your audience anymore, that's where you stop.
And it's okay to leverage a podcast, like as an example, as a season, 12, 13 episodes. Give those your all. Make them the most valuable things that your audience wants to binge listen to, right? Even for the podcasts that I have loved over time, I don't listen to all of them anymore. I just don't. Because there's other things that I'm now interested in, or something else has gotten my attention or whatever. And it's not down on that podcast, right? But there's a cycle of life that your audience goes through, right? And so, I really got into the podcasting, like listening as a listener whenever I had my second child. And I was listening to like comedy podcasts. I was listening to Journey to Launch, Yo Quiero Dinero, Latina to Latina. I was literally walking my newborn in the stroller and just listening to podcasts all the time.
Yep.
And I don't have that kind of time anymore, but it got me into being very curious on what topic am I interested in? I use podcasts very much like a search term these days. So that brings us back to SEO. How are you taking advantage of that person who's literally looking for a topic? There's that opportunity, right? Or maybe you have a very specific avatar, all those moms that are walking their newborns. And they have nothing else to do but to listen to podcasts and feed their child.
They're just trying to get out of the house.
Yes, right?
Yeah, I love that. And I did the same thing for each of my kids when they were born. I knew okay, you got to get moving. You can't just sit around the house, got to get any postpartum depression or anything like that. We got to get ahead of it. So got to stick the baby in the stroller and go out for a walk. And I think my husband thought I was crazy for a little while because he was trying to get up and go to work. And I'm help me put the baby in the stroller. And he's like, what are you doing? So, but yeah, that was my escape because I don't know why, but this just works like magic that the second you put the baby in the stroller, you get down the street, they fall asleep, or even if they're awake, they're just kind of looking around. They're fine. They're happy. And so it was a time that I could know that, I had mental space, which the rest of the day did not feel that way. So it was my almost like meditation or a reset moment was that walk. So yeah, that's a big demographic right there of those women that you can reach. Yeah. So as we wrap up, Stefanie, this has been awesome. And we've taken this in so many different directions. And I know you mentioned a little bit about your business. What can business owners find out there on social media? If you want to let us know your handles, your website, and maybe how we can best interact and support you.
Yeah. From a traditional social media standpoint, I'm most active on Instagram at Women's Wealth Effect. Just all normal spelling, no underscores, just Women's Wealth Effect. Mm-hmm. On LinkedIn, I'm under my personal name, so Stefanie Gonzales, Stefanie with an F, Stefanie, Gonzales, Gonzales, not with the Z at the end, but Z in the middle. But, this year, where I'm really going to be active is on YouTube, and that's going to be through Permission to Be Wealthy. And that, could very well go into the podcast side of it. We've got some interview ideas, series and that type of thing that we want to do more as, we hit a few milestones ourselves. But it's a really interesting space that we're getting into for that. And I'm excited about that this year.
Really exciting. So since it is still in Q1 when people are hearing this episode, would you be open, before we go, to share one of your biggest goals you're working toward this year, or maybe something you're doing toward those goals?
Yeah. Couple things. Last year was all figuring out how we were going to generate passive income even off of our investments. So we were very much like on this dividend covered call strategy, and that worked out. So we're maintaining that this year just to continue to manage our expenses and that type of thing. But this year, from a business standpoint, in terms of my signature program, my ideal this year is to get 40 to 50 women enrolled in the program. And so that's the number I have targeted. If I do shift the program into more of an investing program that isn't only women focused, it's more of a very passive digital course that I promote through Permission to Be Wealthy. Because interesting thing is, Permission to Be Wealthy, 90% of my audience is men. So
yeah, they'll tell their wives.
But yes, hopefully they are. I'm interested to see if the percentage of women compared to other channels is actually higher. That's one piece of data that I haven't gotten yet. But from a Permission to Be Wealthy perspective, our goal is to get to 20 to 30,000 subscribers. And based off of kind of the analysis that we've done, if we can make between AdSense and sponsorships around $50,000 to $60,000, or at least on trajectory to get there, going out of year one, that's a very specific goal. And the thing that we plan to do to accomplish that is we're publishing 2 to 3 videos a week. No if, and, or but.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. I have a partner doing this though, right? So it's not all me.
Yes.
And, we originally were taking this from the standpoint of we were both doing the videos together every single time. And, the reality is it doesn't have to be that way. Mm-hmm. There are a number of couples channels, right? Mm-hmm. But we're 2 puzzle pieces in this very different equation. And we have these strengths one of us has that the other does or doesn't. And we have very different perspectives on things. And so we've decided that we would do majority of our videos. Joe would take one, I would take one. And then for one of our third videos, we're just really going to cover like a definition and do like a quick fire type topic. And then we'll do couples episodes every few weeks that are more lifestyle oriented and that type of thing. And that works for us. And we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing really, yes, your goals and a bit about the strategy toward those goals. But also what I'm really hearing is the way you are planning and coordinating on how to execute that and deciding we don't both have to be in every single video. We don't have to do an interview every single time, right? You don't have to do a solo episode every single time. I think so many people get stuck in that way, like, oh, this is the design or structure I want for my show, so it has to be consistent throughout every single episode. And I think that's great. However, make sure that those parameters aren't actually chains or bars, however you want to say it. Allow that creativity to flow like you are and allow it to be versatile, because you said it perfectly. That versatility is going to be what allows you to actually create 3 episodes a week, because that is a big stack of production. That is an ambitious goal. But with what you're saying and the way you've thought about it strategically, it sounds doable for you. So good job.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And it's allowing us to bring our personalities to the table, because Joseph's the dreamer, the strategist, the dreamer. I am the operations, the executor, the get it done in a level of detail type person.
Yeah.
That's how we manage our finances, right? And so it's going to be really interesting to see how people, if they pick up on that, because that's kind of how we're designing it, because we want people to see, right? That like, these are two very different personalities, and we've navigated this life and made it work together and found this commonality, right, through personal finance, financial independence, and the way that we want to design our lives as a family, as like the common thing, right, in the thread. But we're still allowing ourselves to be ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And for people who are thinking about retiring early, you have to get real clear about who you are, because if you're going to spend a significant portion of your time spending even more time with your partner than you would have when you're working traditionally, it's very different.
Yeah, for sure.
Very different.
That's probably the best advice out of, the whole financial independence goal perspective, is just really to start thinking about that. Thank you so much for being on today with me. You shared
You're welcome.
some really, really great nuggets of wisdom and awesome advice. Thank you.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.